Before we dive in, drop a quick hi in the comments. It may seem small, but trust me, it really helps YouTube share this story with more sci-fi fans like us. I'd love to see who's watching. A burst of static cut across the translation fields, but Leon Voss's voice carried through, calm and steady. We offer no dominance. We offer alliance, mutual support for those left behind. We don't seek to replace power. We seek to share it. Silence. The Assembly of Tarasha. An architectural marvel carved into the orbiting rings of Jeruan glimmered with crystalline light. 100 balconies hovered mid-air, each occupied by delegates whose worlds once ruled or rebelled across. The stars. The obsidian floor beneath Voss reflected the banners of the great powers, dim, brittle in the shifting light. The ambassadorial seat of the Scarine Dominion shifted, their trio of mouths curling upward in synchronized disdain. Beside them, the bulk of the Caltha Triarch flexed, 6 arms twitching near their belt holsters. Voss didn't move. Many of your civilizations once stood where the periphery stands now, he continued, lifting his gaze toward the higher balconies, where the lesser species gathered, perched on platforms that felt more like cages than invitations. The Earth Union proposes a coalition for mutual autonomy, aid, defense, resources for those who seek sovereignty without chains. Some heads turned, but at the central dais, where the Council's true rulers sat, the air grew colder. HFY rose, 8 feet of armored muscle, twin ridges gleaming across his skull. The Grand Marshal of the Jartel Accord spoke with no pretense. Is that what you call it, Voss? His voice cracked the silence. Mutual autonomy? A murmur rippled through the chamber. You offer weapons to savages and call it aid. You wrap conquest in pity. Voss's translator flickered, then steadied. We offer tools. It's the galaxy that insists on cages. Laughter barked from the Tharn Collective's delegation. Mock salutes followed. The insult was clear. Voss's voice remained steady. You fear what freedom brings, because if the periphery no longer needs the core, what's left of your empire? Enough, HFY snapped. You are dismissed. That is not procedure, Voss said. You cannot eject, but the guards were already moving. 2 of the Council's enforcers, armored in bronze exosuits, descended from the hovering platform. One of them gripped Voss by the upper arm. The other placed a hand on his back and shoved. The push was symbolic, not forceful. It wasn't meant to move him. It was meant to be seen. The insult echoed louder than any words. In the upper tiers of the assembly, where the light reached dim and translators often crackled with interference, there was a pause. A breath caught, just long enough to mean something. The delegate from Aten Var, a semi-aquatic species with glassy skin and opaque eyes, lowered his head slightly, as if acknowledging a risk taken. Beside him, a young observer from the Kalari, slender-bodied with segmented arms, tightened his fists, translucent tendons flexing beneath the table. At the back row, an elder from the Khemri, wrapped in frayed ceremonial cloth, placed 3 fingers gently to her chest. A gesture of respect, or mourning, or oath. They didn't cheer. They didn't speak. But they saw, and they remembered. Voss adjusted his sleeve calmly, one last glance to the upper balconies. Not of defiance, but of clarity. Some looked away. Gasps rose from the upper tiers while the core members laughed. Somewhere in the gallery, someone whispered, "And they came offering peace." As Voss was marched from the central platform, his boots striking against the stone steps of the amphitheater, the delegates leaned in to watch. Some recorded it. Others simply smiled. The diplomat did not resist. He walked tall, his chin high, his voice silent. But his message was complete. For those watching in the shadows, the ones without banners, without fleets, without names on the official registry of power, the silence said everything. 6 hours later, in the outer rim of Sector Trinac Delta, the cargo vessel UEN Mercy Hand drifted past a gas plume on its final approach to Lavarin Station. Her sister ship, UEN Solace Reach, followed behind, engines humming in near silence. They carried medical supplies, food canisters, basic power cores, unarmed, unescorted, and stamped with diplomatic seals. Cargo bays filled with cryopods and relief equipment. Everything marked for the colonies displaced by skirmishes no one claimed responsibility for. Captain Rail Morgan sat in the pilot's chair, jaw tight as he watched the grav field ripple unnaturally. "Something's wrong," he said. His co-pilot, Soren Kells, leaned forward. "We're still 2 minutes from safe lane transition. Nothing on the scope." Morgan frowned. "Recalibrate. Wait. There. You see that distortion near the beacon? That's not background radiation." Then the alert hit. Sensors flooded with hostile designations. 3 Dread-class interceptors, flagged with council sigils, dropped from hyperspace at weapons range. No hails, no queries, no demands. Only a single broadcast on a wideband channel. "UEN vessels, you are in violation of restricted military space. Prepare for immediate detainment or destruction." "Restricted?" Kells said, voice tight. "There was no notice about..." The first missile struck Mercy Hand mid-keel. There was no time to scream, no time to react. The vessel fractured clean through her spine, the explosion washing across the black in a blistering arc of blue flame. Debris spun in slow motion, a silent carousel of wreckage and molten metal. Inside Solace Reach, Captain Rail. Morgan froze for a heartbeat. The reflection of the fireball bloomed across the glass of his visor, bright enough to burn into his vision, real enough to sear into memory. His breath caught. Kells stared, wide-eyed. "Gods," Morgan snapped. "Back. Broadcast now. All frequencies." Kells hesitated, just a second too long. "Now, damn it," Morgan roared. The co-pilot keyed in the command, the channel opening with a sharp ping. Morgan leaned forward. His voice didn't shake. It struck, low, measured, final. "If this is how you answer peace," he said, "you'll regret this war." Then the second missile came, the screen filled with fire. Across the galaxy, fragments of the broadcast echoed through relay towers, pirate comms, backdoor diplomatic channels. No official feeds carried the footage, but the explosion was recorded, rebroadcasted, and dissected before Earth even released a statement. And in the dark corners of unregistered colonies, where diplomats never arrived, and where promises were always paid in blood, one sentence burned into memory like seared metal. "If this is how you answer peace," the war hadn't been declared yet, but it had already begun. The transmission replayed again, low, fragmented, raw. "If this is how you answer peace," the voice crackled through the comms, "you'll regret this war." In the slums of Tyron's Reach, a half-frozen mining colony on the edge of Val Sector, an old projector buzzed to life above a food line. Dozens turned. The image of a cargo vessel engulfed in fire lit up the frost-covered metal walls. Someone in the crowd whispered, "They killed them for medicine." In the orbiting junkyards of Cressel Minor, where refugees picked through. Husks of forgotten ships. A child replayed the clip on a salvaged panel, eyes wide, unmoving. Her father stood behind her, fists clenched. "Earth didn't beg," he said. They warned. On Dravnal Station, deep inside a trade lane used by smugglers and exiles, the encrypted feeds lit up first. Pirate crews paused. Sellsword stopped, mid-deal. The phrase looped again and again in a dozen languages. Some laughed, others sat very still. The message traveled faster than any official newsfeed. By the time Earth's diplomatic channels issued a request for clarification, the galaxy had already made up its mind. On Mars, beneath Olympus Mons, the red dust fell in silence over the entrance to the UEDC's subterranean command complex. Inside, the temperature held steady at 14 degrees Celsius. The air was filtered with military precision. The emergency session began without ceremony. 17 men sat in a recessed semicircle around the holotable, their expressions carved from stone. Holofeeds flickered, images of destroyed aid vessels, intercepted transmissions, and council spokespersons denying all knowledge of the attack. General Joseph Mitford stood with his arms folded behind his back. He wore a dark blue uniform, stripped of any decoration beyond the Earth Union seal on his chest. His face was deeply lined, his close-cropped hair graying at the edges. "Spin it however they like," said Director Velen, Earth's liaison to the Galactic Council, voice tight with frustration. "They're denying it was sanctioned, blaming a rogue patrol unit. They streamed the second kill," Mitford interrupted. The room didn't breathe. Even the holofeed flickered as if ashamed. Deliberate broadcast, no warning, no survivors. He nodded toward the image frozen on the table, a frame by frame of the explosion that consumed Solace Reach. This was a message delivery. "What do you propose?" asked Admiral Deng, head of Orbital Fleet Operations. "I don't propose," Mitford said. "I act." The room shifted. "We deploy strategic decentralization. No formal declarations, no posturing, no ambassadors. We take the fire to the edges of their empire and we light the whole damn thing from underneath." A young analyst at the back, Lieutenant Karim, adjusted his tablet. "That would require bypassing direct engagement protocols." "Yes," Mitford replied. "It would." "Sir," said Commander Juno, the only woman present, her tone crisp, "what exactly are you activating?" Mitford finally turned to face the full circle. "Initiate Black Directive. 24 planets. Selective insertion. Advisors, not occupiers. Tactical cells only. Start with those closest to the breach lines, and those who've been waiting for an excuse to rise." He paused. "They just got one." Admiral Deng sat forward. "You'll need authority to coordinate all forward assets." "I'll have it," Mitford said flatly. Deng didn't answer. He simply nodded. Encrypted orders flickered across secure channels. On Ganymede, a recon vessel went dark and disappeared into the shadow of Jupiter. In the deserts of Proxima's, Fourth Moon, an old comms tower burst to life, its array quietly reoriented toward the drift colonies. In the Dagan cluster, a mercenary captain named Kellen Faro received a short pulse through a dormant implant. He stood, threw his drink aside, and boarded his ship without a word. On Varela 9, a quiet agricultural colony, 6 satellites changed, orbital parameters within 30 minutes. In the ruins of an old military depot on Larkos 3, a hangar long considered abandoned lit up with coded strobes. Cargo drones, buried in dry dust, activated and began loading modular crates. The air cracked with static. Somewhere deep, a forgotten generator screamed back to life. Not all who received the message were human, but all had been trained by them, advised by them. Given one chance, just one, to push back. They did not ask why. They asked when. Hours later, a single transmission was broadcast across Earth, Luna, Mars, and all colonies within Core Alliance territories. The man on the screen was alone. No backdrop, no flag, no insignia, Mitford. His voice came steady, cold. No more proposals, no more apologies. They answered peace with fire. Now they will answer to us. He paused, letting the silence stretch. To those on Earth and beyond. "Hold the line. To our allies in the dark. The time has come." He looked directly into the lens. They crossed it first. Now we cross back. The feed ended. Dust settled across the shoulders of Commander Harik Vol as he stepped through the shattered wall of the Korgath Prime outpost. The air was thin, noticeably so. He adjusted his rebreather without concern. "Clear," he muttered. Behind him, 30 Jadari shock troops advanced in perfect formation, their dark red armor gleaming under the synthetic lights of the landing corridor. Each step echoed with the assured cadence of a conquering force. Their helmets hissed softly as they filtered what little oxygen remained in the air. This installation was marked operational, barked Lieutenant Drex, checking his holoslate. Atmosphere levels shouldn't be this low. Faulty systems, Vol replied. These dirt-born rebels barely know how to seal a bulkhead. We secure the area, then move to the northern ridge. Orders are to make this quick. They didn't. Notice the sealed vents, or the missing backup generators, or the flicker of inactive defense panels, modified to look broken, but rigged for remote activation. It wasn't neglect. It was design. From deep within the substructure, unseen by Council optics, a pair of dark eyes watched through a narrow slit of corroded wall. Daramek tilted his head, whispering into the cracked comlink fastened to his collar. They've breached Section Alpha. Breathers on, just like they trained us. A voice came through low and calm. Copy. No fire until they're under. Mech adjusted the hose strapped to his mask and backed away into the shadows, past rusted piping and clusters of barbed fungus native to the deep rock layers. Behind him, 6 Korgothi fighters waited, broad-shouldered, with skin like cracked, obsidian and jaws lined with bone ridges. They didn't speak. They just nodded. A week earlier, the humans had arrived without ceremony. No banners, no fleet, no grand speeches. Just 3 unmarked ships and 2 men with tired eyes and hard voices. Captain. Hermes Brenner was the first to speak in the council chamber buried beneath the mountains of Lower Korgoth. We're not here to take over, he said. We're here to help you burn them down. He laid out schematics, tunnel designs, weakness maps for Jadari infantry formations, modified air cycler sabotage procedures, trap layer protocols, combat spacing for subterranean maneuvers. His second, Lieutenant Marcus Yarrow, taught by showing, hand-to-hand in the tunnels, how to strike low, where armor couldn't bend, how to plant a charge and vanish into the stone. He didn't speak much, but his movements told stories, every motion efficient, merciless. The Korgothi absorbed every detail. They didn't ask where the humans had learned these tactics. They simply adapted. By the 4th day, Brenner stepped back. They're ready. Yarrow nodded once. Pull us out. Let them write this in their own blood. Commander Vol's boots struck metal as he descended into the central corridor. His suit's HUD pinged with motionless readings. No resistance, no traps, no heat signatures. The rebel base was too quiet. Something's wrong, Drex said. Vol waved him off. They ran, as they always do. Vol took one more step. Then the wall to their left exploded, a torrent of metal shards, not shrapnel. Cut pipe and wiring sharpened into darts. 2 soldiers went down immediately, their rebreathers punctured. Another staggered, choking. Then the lights died. In the flickering aftermath, a figure dropped from the ceiling. Not a human. Korgothi. Thicker than their files had shown, faster. Hit the floor with a stone-carving blade in each hand and drove one clean through the neck seam of the nearest Jadari. The trooper spasmed, fell. The others fired, but too late. By then, the tunnel had already come alive. From the walls, from the floor, from the vents. They poured in, axes made from salvaged plating, blades honed from structural beams, bolts launched from spring-coiled rebar rigs, and masks, homemade respirators, ugly and effective, blinking red in the dark. The council troops fought back. But their optics were blind. Their HUDs failed. Their oxygen tanks hissed and drained, not from sabotage, but from deliberate miscalibration caused by tampered charging bays, wired the night before by hands who knew exactly how long Jadari systems could last on half pressure. One by one, the soldiers dropped into the tunnels, gasping, wheezing, crawling for breathable air. That was where they died. The deepest levels of the installation were more like a hive than a base. Cramped passages layered with heat residue and stone ash. The rebels did not chase in straight lines. They folded around the enemy, trapping them with collapsible grates and crumbling debris barriers. Every turn was a funnel, every open space, a killing field. They moved like the tunnels had taught them, curving, ambushing, bleeding the ground dry. Lieutenant Drex made it farther than most. He stripped his helmet, blood pouring from a gash above his eye, and stumbled into a junction, chamber filled with machinery he didn't recognize. He raised his rifle, fired, hit nothing. From behind the humming core, a single figure emerged, bare-chested, coated in black dust. Korgathi, taller than Drex expected, eyes lit with something feral. Drex raised the rifle again. The Korgathi didn't flinch. A wire snapped. The floor dropped. Drex fell into the lower shaft, screamed, then stopped. At surface level, the Council's command shuttle received the last garbled ping from Vol's armor transponder before it too went dark. No survivors. When the recovery drone arrived 3 hours later, it didn't descend. It hovered, just long enough to record the scene laid out at the base of the entrance tunnel. 34 Jadari bodies stacked in silence, their weapons placed neatly beside them. Their helmets removed. Above the corpses, pinned to the wall with a jagged metal rod, was a black banner, improvised from shredded supply canvas. In crude, bold lettering, in a language none of the Korgathi had ever spoken until the last 7 days, it read, "You'll regret this war." This was the first lesson. The last evacuation shuttle lifted off from Varela 9 at 0743 local time. Dust spiraled in its wake, scattering across the empty landing platforms of Port Halen. Crates of ration packs and oxygen tanks lay discarded near the hangars. Holographic projectors blinked quietly, still looping evacuation orders in a dozen civilian dialects. Colonists fled under the watch of orbital surveillance. Families packed into trams, cryopods sealed and loaded. Men shouted orders, women cried, children clung to whatever arms they could. It was all real until it wasn't. 10 kilometers beyond the colony perimeter, in the shadow of an old agricultural complex, Colonel Reese Calder stood inside a decommissioned comms tower with 2 fingers pressed to his earpiece. "They bought it," he said. "They're moving into polar formation." A voice crackled through, filtered by static. "Telemetry confirms. 9 vessels. No scouts ahead. They think we left it all behind." Calder turned to the group behind him. 12 men and 2 women, all in mismatched armor, mostly ex-miners and field techs. No one spoke. To Calder's left, an older man hunched over a display console that once managed irrigation data for corn hybrids. His name was Lero Danik, former satellite engineer turned weapons tech. He tapped a key. Sat nodes 1 through 12 locked. Payloads armed. Calder nodded. Confirmed targeting matrix. Civilian sensor grid is patched. We've got atmospheric refraction correction from ground heat signatures. Precision within 3 meters, Danik said, his voice flat, cold. "Ready on your mark." Calder stepped to the viewport. Beyond the barren plains, a pattern of bright reflections dotted. The upper sky, agricultural satellites, dozens of them, left spinning above the colony as relics of a system once built to regulate photosynthesis for genetically enhanced crops. Each one now carried high-yield improvised ordnance, converted propulsion cores, metal plating shrapnel, and re-engineered reactor modules. In the hands of Earth's engineers, a field of farming satellites had become a low-orbit minefield. Calder ordered, "Wait for the mark." Above the planet, the Council fleet drifted into position. 9 cruisers in 2 lines, escorted by 4 corvettes. They moved like they had moved 1,000 times before, slow, confident, methodical. Captain Sorthan of the Jareth Dominion stood at the helm of the lead vessel, VNS Serak, his thin hands clasped behind his back. His species, the Shan, were tall and slender, skin translucent, like marble-veined glass. Their voices were musical. Their arrogance was practiced. "Still no resistance?" he asked, his tone bored. His tactical officer, Jareen Kott, a reptilian Saurex with a rust-colored exosuit, flicked his tongue once. "None. No shield signatures, no power surges. Colony appears deserted. Sorthan tilted his head. Pathetic. And this was one of the human-aligned worlds? They ran, Cott said. Typical. Sorthan turned away from the screen. Prepare. Drones for ground sweep. I want the central comms node intact. Their recordings may be... An alarm chirped. Sir, Cott said. I'm getting... Wait. There's a shift in orbitals. Thermal rise in atmospheric fringe. Multiple points. Sorthan frowned. Weapon signatures? No. Agricultural tags, old satellite IDs. Some still have council codes. Another pause. Then the satellite images updated. The units were moving. The tactical screen flooded red. Missile lock. Cott started. Too late. Silence fell over Port Halen. Then the sky lit up. Not with sound, but with motion. Streaks of kinetic fire traced downward like threads of molten wire. No smoke. No buildup. Just a single moment of absolute stillness. Then contact. The vacuum cracked like a fault line. Orbit turned to shrapnel. The sky fell in silence. And fire came without mercy. The Serek never had a chance. Its shield lattice collapsed under the stress of 6 simultaneous impacts. The hull cracked down the middle. Its fusion core ruptured. The explosion didn't sound like thunder. It sounded like bone splintering in vacuum. The second ship, Travis Unn, attempted evasive maneuvers, but its rear engine pod caught a burst of metallic shrapnel. The reactor overcorrected, then ignited. One after another, the ships died. Clean, calculated. No dogfights, no hail requests, just targeting solutions and impact. On the ground, inside, the comms tower. Danik was already inputting the next sequence. Next wave programmed. South Arc sweep. Remaining sats are primed. Calder's voice didn't change. Fire again. In space, 3 more satellites reoriented with mechanical precision. Their payloads were smaller. Focused strikes meant for bridge sectors and power conduits. On board the corvette Koresh Toll, a last-ditch transmission was broadcast in panic. The signal crackled, half-jammed, caught by a relay tower in Varela's southern hemisphere. They're not fleeing, it was a trap. They weren't fleeing, it's a trap. The signal drowned in silence. By the end of the hour, all 9 council ships were gone. What little wreckage remained rained into the upper atmosphere and burned as streaks of red light against the purple sky. At the edge of the old comms tower, Calder stepped outside and looked up. Behind him, a woman emerged with a folded black banner and climbed the support scaffolding in silence. She hung it from the edge of the broken dish. The wind caught it and pulled it wide, like a verdict handed. Down from the dirt below, and for a moment Varela Naim looked peaceful again. The Jadari occupation force marched through the central avenue of Z4 Limbus beneath banners of the council's crest, flanked by civilian towers and hollow-eyed locals pressed against building walls. The rhythmic thump of synchronized footfalls echoed off concrete like war drums. Troop shuttles hovered in low orbit above the skyline, a show of force casting shadows longer than the buildings themselves. Major Vel Kieran stood atop a mobile command platform, helmet tucked under one arm. His gray skin shimmered faintly under the neon lights of the city's core. A Narel, 4-eyed bioluminescent veins across his temples, Kieran radiated the quiet, practiced menace of a man convinced his war was already won. Population. Compliant, reported Captain Dresk, a squat, bristled Suran officer in polished silver armor. No visible resistance. Broadcast loops have neutralized crowd energy. Kieran surveyed the silent city. Tower windows dark. Public holoscreens rerouting pre-approved messages of unity and order. And below, civilians watched the parade of occupying troops with unmoving faces. Blank. Defeated. Keep them watching, Kieran said. They should know who owns them now. He raised a fist. The march halted. At the center of the square, directly across from the old colonial palace, stood a government annex. Tall, black-paneled, its side wall facing the plaza like a blank canvas. A second passed, then another. Without sound or warning, the entire wall erupted into fire. A column of flame burst outward with such force it cracked the nearest troop transport side plating. The explosion didn't just detonate, it branded the air with fire. Each letter seared into vision like a curse spoken in flame, traced across the flames in searing orange. You'll regret this war. Before the smoke cleared, the first shots rang. Out, not from windows, from beneath. Manhole covers burst open. Grates flew into the air. Cracks in the pavement split wide, and from the sewers, from the utility shafts, from the heat vents and delivery chutes, came the humans. Black armor streaked with city dust, night vision visors, silencers mounted to compact rifles. Every squad emerged in perfect timing across the city, near transit hubs, water junctions, civic towers. They didn't scream. They didn't broadcast. They executed. The first wave of Jadari fell before their formations could tighten. Major Kieran ducked. Behind the side of the command platform, blood already streaking down the plates of his left gauntlet. Ambush, sector-wide. Dresk shouted, his voice rising over the chaos. Multiple insertion points. Underground infiltration. His sentence was cut short by a sharp crack, the sound of a shaped charge breaching the rear power node of the mobile HQ. The platform exploded from the inside, throwing Kieran and half his command staff through a shattered store window. By the time he stood up, the square was fire. Across the southern quarter, in the shipping district, Council forces scrambled to regroup, only to find their support bots malfunctioning. A delivery unit, CIV Bot Model 9, spun out of its route and collided with a wall, then detonated, releasing an EMP burst that disabled local sensors. Above, a maintenance hub, a single cleaning drone hovered into position, its exterior repainted and its software overwritten with targeting subroutines. It released 3 charges into a fuel conduit network. The detonation leveled a full street corner, collapsing it into a cratered mess of steel and flame. From the rubble, a single figure emerged, Sergeant Elias Koran, Earth Special Operations. He signaled with a sharp flash of light toward a mirrored building facade. Snipers responded. Jadari officers dropped before they could organize. Every strike was timed. Every detonation coordinated, inside the command net, only static. Then, just once, a voice came through. Grainy, measured, irrefutable. No banners of theirs in this city, only ours. Burn the symbol. Take the center. Mitfort. The signal cut. Out. It didn't need to return. By nightfall, the old palace was surrounded. Jadari forces had retreated to its interior, converting the marble-floored halls into defensive choke points. But the resistance didn't charge blindly. They sealed the exits, collapsed stairwells, cut power to the emergency lifts. Then they waited, until heat sensors inside the walls began to rise. Uncontrolled. Fire. Oxygen starvation. Panic. At 0219, the western wall caved inward. Koran's unit advanced through smoke and ash, dropping the last 2 defenders in a precise, silent motion. No more defenders. No more flags. Only smoke, silence, and scorched marble. The palace was theirs now, and nothing of the old rule remained. At dawn, the people of Z4 Limbus stepped into the streets again, not out of fear, but to see if it had truly happened. It had. The civic holoscreens no longer looped the council's anthem. Instead, they displayed a single frame, the fireborn sentence, etched into the wall, caught mid-burn. A message not broadcasted, but carved into memory. On the central spire of the palace, where once the insignia of the Jadari hung, a new banner rippled in the wind, stitched in coarse black fiber, cut from scavenged dropship plating and nothing else. The first riot on Tirvan started with silence. No chants, no slogans, just a crowd of dock workers standing still in front of the regional headquarters of the council liaison office. 10 minutes passed. Then one of them, a young man in tattered mining gear, climbed the building's facade, and tore down the blue and gold insignia of the Galactic Council. The crowd didn't cheer. They watched as the emblem hit the ground, then they moved. In less than an hour, every checkpoint, surveillance, node and transit barricade in Tirvan's lower sector was burning. By midday, an unregistered transmission pulsed through the city's local net. A grainy loop of the Z4 Limbus Annex wall caught mid-flame, the words frozen in searing red. Across the stars, the same signal appeared again. On Talasar Prime, a planet long declared neutral, Chancellor Rayna Carr stood in front of the Interworld Council dome and spoke with authority. The Earth Union did not declare this war, he said, but they are fighting it, and we would be cowards not to see the truth in that. Behind him, banners shifted. The Talasar crest was lowered. In its place, a black field unfurled. The words stitched across it read what 1,000 broadcasts had failed to erase. In the outer districts, spontaneous celebrations erupted, not out of joy, but defiance. In the orbiting media rings, pirate broadcasters hijacked council channels and overlaid video feeds from Korgath Prime, Jadari corpses stacked outside tunnel mouths, the banner behind them stark and silent. On Sasari Station, a freighter captain named Juno Malik, known for neutrality and cargo smuggling, dumped his council contracts on live feed. They paid me to run supplies, he said, but they didn't pay me to stay quiet. I've seen what's happening, and I know which side I want to be standing on. When the dust settles, the broadcast ended with a single frame, Mars, from orbit, with Earth's black ships moving in unison like silent wolves through shadow. In the core worlds, the fractures began. At the Council's central chamber on Core Athis, the weekly deliberation spiral dissolved into shouting within minutes. High strategist Theros Malik of the Jatel Accord slammed a clenched fist on the crystal table. You promised control. We see collapse. Across from him, Envoy Laroon of the Vailani Collective, skin like obsidian silk, responded coolly. Perhaps collapse is what happens when you rule by fear and call it order. They're planting flags in open revolt, shouted another voice. Screens around the chamber displayed synchronized feeds. A planet in Sector Varn, where protesters filled the sky bridges, hurling council drones from rooftops. Another in the Mern Reach, where military officers defected mid-patrol and joined the local resistance. The delegation from the Ostrax Dominion disconnected their line mid-session, refusing to speak, refusing to vote. For the first time in 3 standard decades, a call for re-election of Council Command Authority was officially submitted and signed by 8 systems. Back in the fringe colonies, the rebellion moved faster than declarations. On Helos 6, the planetary comm relay repeated a shortwave transmission, untraceable in origin, but received on every device. Audio only. The voice, unmistakable. Gravel. Ice. Command. They wanted to silence us. Now the whole galaxy hears our voice. Mitfort's message was not repeated. The visuals had already done the rest. In the undercity of Oris Vent, a young girl spray-painted the phrase across the wreckage of a broken patrol drone. In the ice domes of Koresh Minor, a retired mechanic converted weather balloons into signal repeaters and launched them one by one, carrying the phrase into high orbit. In the great trade halls of Selva Rith, where only wealth was meant to speak, a black banner was unfurled over the atrium's skylight. On Rendar Station, journalist Revik Solon, the last remaining anchor not sponsored by council-backed media, broadcasted what became the most watched segment of the year. He stood before an interactive star map. Systems in revolt blinked red, sympathizers blinked gray, and in the upper corner the word unconfirmed hovered over 24 worlds, each one silent, each one listening. Waiting. We've reported death counts, he said. Fleet. Movements. Political fractures. But there's one thing we haven't said outright. Until now. He turned to face the camera. They're not losing. On Mars, inside a low-lit command vault beneath the northern pole, Mitford sat alone before a live camera. No advisors, no aides. The room around him was dark. Only the glow of the transmission panel reflected in the metal of his uniform. He leaned forward. They wanted to silence us. Now the whole galaxy hears our voice. He held the stare. Just for a second longer. Then the feed went black. And somewhere, across the edge of mapped space, a council administrator stared at the report flashing across his console. 6 new planetary systems refusing to comply with deployment orders. One of them had never spoken to Earth. But someone had painted a message on their moon's surface, across 40 kilometers of dust, traced by fusion torch. It wasn't a threat. It was a verdict, burned into stone to outlast the war. Under the crystalline dome of the Galactic Council chamber, a soft chime echoed, ceremonial, muted, hollow. The assembly room, once a spectacle of light and diplomatic theater, now felt abandoned in its own grandeur. Dozens of chairs remained, unoccupied. A few hollow projectors flickered with distorted avatars, delegates appearing as half-formed images, unstable signals, deliberately underpowered. Arak Vor walked to the center alone. He did not wear his command armor this time. Instead, a formal dark robe crossed with the red sigil of the Jatel Accord, meant to signify diplomacy. It only highlighted how stiffly he moved. Behind him, no procession, no military attachés, only silence. When he activated the central podium, the translation bands lit up across the room, filling the air with a low hum. The surrounding dignitaries, what little remained of them, turned their eyes, not with expectation, but calculation. Arak Vor's voice came clear. This council acknowledges the cost of war, he began, and seeks, not out of weakness, but foresight, a cessation of direct hostilities with the Earth Union. Some heads tilted, others remained still. A summit, neutral ground, an open forum to establish terms of mutual stability. He paused carefully. This is not surrender. This is wisdom, a chance to spare more loss. No one interrupted, but no one agreed. On the upper terrace, where media observers once hovered in broadcast pods, only 2 drones remained, both inactive. Even the propaganda machinery had gone quiet, Arak Vor continued. We are not blind. We see the fragmentation. We see the uprisings. We see the consequences. That word lingered. 30 minutes later, a transmission left Korathis, routed through 12 diplomatic relays, verified by 6 signature nodes, and flagged as top priority to Earth's command authority. It was formal, courteous, restrained, an invitation to a peace summit, with attached assurances, a full list of attending systems, proposed topics, time frame, location. It reached Mars Command within 9 minutes, the FY. Response came 34 minutes later, not a call, not a reply transmission, just a single burst packet, a file. It opened automatically on Council-approved devices, no security breach, no delay, a video. The screen showed a single man seated in an unlit room, concrete walls, no banners. The only light came from a flickering data feed reflecting off the metal plates of his uniform. General Joseph Mitford. His expression was blank. The kind of stillness that made it hard to breathe. You don't want peace, he said. You want control. A long pause. His voice remained steady. Now, you will have the consequences. The screen cut to black. No reply address, only the reflection of their own silence in orbit above the desert moon. Raelis, the 8th Jadari Enforcement Fleet, received reactivation orders. They were to proceed to Iral Tau, enforce blockade procedures, and detain rebel sympathizers attempting to evacuate. Admiral Harkan Lo reviewed the directive on the bridge of the VNS Koltar. His officers stood by, awaiting orders. He closed the report. He did not speak. Instead, he keyed in a new course manually, heading out of the designated combat zone toward the far edge of the Helion drift. When his XO asked for clarification, Lowe answered without turning. This battle's already lost. I'm not spilling blood to cover someone else's mistake. The Koltar left the fleet formation minutes later. No report was filed. Similar decisions unfolded across the sector. In the Vendari line, 2 full council battle groups disabled their own weapon relays, citing overlap anomalies and maintenance faults. On Polvaris Station, a logistics officer rerouted fuel reserves to a planetary militia that had declared open rebellion just hours earlier. He falsified the requisition forms with practiced ease and never tried to hide it. His commanding officer read the report, tore it in half, and left the room. Back on Core Athis, the council convened again under emergency status. Only 16 of the 82 official members attended in person. The others had gone dark or submitted silence as their official response. The chamber had changed. Where once it pulsed with layered sound and shifting colors, now there was only flickering light and strained breath. Delegates spoke in low tones, some watching their own feeds more than the central dais. Strategist Malik, still wrapped in the silver formal wear of the Accord, stood beside Arakvor and addressed the assembly. We offered peace. We extended a path forward. They rejected it. Envoy Larun of the Vailani Collective raised a hand, not to interrupt, but to steady himself as he stood. You offered a leash, he said, and now you wonder why the wolf bit through it. Arakvor stepped forward again, not to address, but to endure. He didn't speak from the podium. He no longer needed one. He looked around the half-empty chamber and said what none of them had dared voice aloud. They are not stopping. No one argued. A counselor from the Saren Dominion removed his insignia and left without a word. Others exchanged glances. 3 delegates disconnected their projection feeds mid-session. The chamber dimmed further. On one of the external monitors, a slow cascade of system flags appeared, nodes turning gray, then black. Signals lost. Silence confirmed. No explosions, no fleets, just systems that had stopped answering, stopped listening. And somewhere in the middle of it all, in a hall once built to decide the fate of empires, the council found itself unable to speak. For the first time, their words held no power, and no one cared to listen. The breach began at 0417 local system time. On row 7, where the council still believed it had operational dominance, the collapse didn't begin with fire. It began with blindness. In the orbital command node, Lieutenant Harron of the Jadari, 6th Watch, squinted at a blank telemetry screen. One by one, the orbital sensors had gone dark. No alarms, no spikes, just gone. He tapped a diagnostic override. Nothing. By the time the perimeter arrays responded, the first explosions were already blooming across the northern arc. Remote charges placed in ancient terrain cuts, igniting fuel lines and triggering tunnel collapses that buried every supply route. From the cliffs east of the capital complex, Emmerich Dane adjusted his scope. North lines are gone, said Jalen Murr beside him. South should light up any minute. They waited. Below, what remained of the council's local garrison scrambled. Convoys reversed course, cannons swiveled without targets, orders were issued that no longer mattered. By Tenquao, the last command post was taken with barely a word spoken. The final strike, detonating from beneath a refueling station, was not tactical. It was surgical. Ulankar fell next. For centuries, it had stood as one of the Council's industrial pillars, armored not with walls but with systems. Orbital enforcers, tracking beacons, buried strike nests, all automated to defend critical mineral extraction operations. None of them engaged. When Union vessels arrived, they found the Planetary Authority Center fully powered and completely unguarded. Colonel Brax Entil met them at the primary docking bay, alone, no weapons, no pretense. You can keep the facilities operational, he said. They still have value. He handed over his access codes, then walked away, not arrested, not pursued. The humans didn't even speak. There was nothing left to say. At 19 so, standard galactic, without ceremony or encryption, a signal was injected into every known relay corridor from the inner systems to the rim. No ID markers, no affiliation. Codes, just a voice, familiar, commanding, inevitable, Mitfort. If this is how you answer peace, a beat of silence, sharp, unnatural, as if the breath of a whole galaxy had caught. You'll regret this war. No outro, no repeat. Just a final line drawn, not in defiance, but in gravity. In the Borealis archipelago of Mirren 4, where rebellion had long simmered without ignition, a column of armored freighters descended into the city without facing a single rail volley. The populace stood in the streets. They didn't cheer nor resist. The local broadcast tower, long used to suppress unauthorized transmissions, began projecting live footage from Row 7. No narrator, no banner, just wreckage being swept, locals reclaiming ground, cargo doors opening, to welcome supplies instead of arms. One image remained fixed longer than the rest. A council shuttle, painted white, left untouched in the square, not as a trophy, but as a relic. A warning to anyone still clinging to past certainties. Farther out, in the supply moons of the Drelza vein, council haulers were intercepted by independent squadrons not for piracy, but for redirection. Their cargo manifests were rerouted. Their crews disarmed, fed, and returned to orbit unharmed. "What do we tell command?" asked one pilot. The rebel coordinator paused. "If command still exists, they'll already know." On the border world of Uran-Skar, a battalion commander named Vel Dawn, long loyal to council doctrine, opened his secure brief at dawn to find his next assignment: suppress a workers' revolt at a refinery hub now declared critical to restabilization efforts. He read the directive twice, then folded it, placed it in a thermal incinerator, and walked to the outer perimeter of the garrison. There, instead of posting guards, he ordered the gates unsealed. By midday, the workers had taken control. By evening, they asked him to stay. He did, not to command, to teach. Across the void, comms traffic thinned, not because fewer voices tried to speak, but because fewer still had the will to respond. Whole sectors ceased requesting authorization for movement. Trade fleets adjusted routes without permits. Navigation hubs flickered as new nodes took root, broadcasting not commands, but coordination. Order didn't vanish. It shifted. No central charter, no anthem, only an understanding. On a plateau above, the shattered plains of Dython 3, an old man led two boys across the rock. They carried no flags, only a folded piece of cloth and a makeshift pole fashioned from antenna tubing. They raised it without ceremony. The black banner caught in the early eye, wind and twisted once before settling. There was no need for words. The council had long since abandoned this place. Below, in the ruins of a former barracks, children played where barricades used to stand, and in the hollow of a former council chamber, cold and cavernous and long since emptied, a monitor sparked to life one final time, reactivated by a long-forgotten relay. It displayed no data, no images, no code, only a transmission log. Last confirmed message. If this is how you answer peace. Status: irreversible. Consequences: ongoing. Hey there, space human. I'm really curious about your thoughts on this video. Drop a quick comment and let me know what's on your mind. Or just say hi if you prefer. Either way, I'd love to hear from you. Oh, and one last thing. Every great soldier knows that to survive and become a hero, taking care of yourself is key. So before you go, check the pinned comment. Trust me, it's important. And I've chosen another video for you to watch. Just click the card here, or here if you want the whole playlist. See you there.